And welcome back. We're now on our third question under the Do Not Pass Go, Prison and its Impact on the Black Community section of the Just Us or Justice section. And the question will be addressed to Greg first, which is prison the new form of slavery?
Yes. Okay,
Ladies, whoever, okay. Like, ladies, whoever wants to go next.
Yes, if you look at the history of prison, the reason why there's prisons, all the money that's made from prisons, from the cheap labor that comes from prisoners, it absolutely is a new version of slavery. Just in some cases, it isn't a life sentence of slavery.
I would agree with Greg. I have on my phone, it's kind of like explaining the 13th documentary that Ava Durney, I'm sorry if I pronounced her name wrong, but when I was specifically stating about the 13th Amendment, here's what it actually said, how it was ratified in 1865. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereas the parties shall have duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So slavery actually would be acceptable for punishment for a crime. So it's stated that, President Nixon's his war on drugs and Clinton's 3 strikes you're out legislation kind of led to the high disproportionate numbers of the black men in prison, and why there's such a short population in America, but they make up a huge number in the prison.
Deanna, go ahead.
I do agree that this is a new form of slavery. I think, as Greg echoed, that prisoners are making 93 cents an hour, and some states, some places, 16 cents an hour. Read this from an article by the Policy Prison Initiative. Those statistics come from, so you can fact check me if you would like. My boyfriend Dave, he made a good point about how we were arguing one time or debating one time about how people did not have a choice to enter slavery as we have known it in the American system. And so I would also want to make the point that if you do not argue that it's slavery, a new form of slavery, it is very close to a new form of Jim Crow, which brings me also to the book that talks about this, the mass incarceration, the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, also a good read.
I noticed that we talked about black men a lot, and I just wanted to drop a statistic from the NAACP where it states that at least 1 in 100 African American women are in prison at highly disproportionate levels as well. So even though it is that black men are represented in these prison systems as well, we shouldn't forget about the women, and sometimes that does happen a lot. Sometimes in the movements we do kind of forget about the women, so that's why they had to add counter movements such as Say Her Name, so that we do remember that there are women being affected by like police brutality and other things like prison too. So we want to remember the women and the minorities within the minority.
What pushes should they? What things should they push for when it comes to reforming the prison system? In terms, because I mean, you all agree that it's like a new form of slavery, and that the way that it's operated and within the gains that it's made outside of its walls, basically is off of the backs of these people who are mostly, as we've already discussed, disproportionately people of color, mostly black men and sometimes women as well. Actually, for the women's side, probably the same thing. So what kind of reforms should we push for in terms of?
Well, first off, you can't allow it to be privatized.
You have to fight that.
Once you put money in the Indian system, it's gonna be corrupt.
Yeah.
So.
Wait, any system?
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean,
so instead of actually rehabilitating, it's really about them.
Levels of corruption.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really about them making the money versus I think that some of them actually going to jail and paying for the crime. I think that the economic profits is something that's really kind of overshadowing a lot of the things. I do commend Obama for pardoning a lot of the non-offensive, drug-related, non-violent, excuse me, I'm sorry, non-violent, pardoning a lot of those crimes.
I just read President Trump's proposed budget. And
Fantastic. Go on.
and I noticed something in there that he was seeking to defund the federal prisons, and I'm just like, well, where is that money going to go if the government's not building prisons but prisons are still being built? Then that means they're going to be privatized. And with privatization comes less regulation. See, baby girl agrees. So it's very troubling to hear that. So we have to fight. We have to lobby against our congressmen and our president when they're making these unjust budget proposals. And also at the community and local level, we need to make sure we go out and vote this coming election, because there's going to be a lot of seats up in Congress, and we need to vote for people who represent our interests. But I did want to make that point about the privatization of prisons, since Greg brought that up, and how things aren't going in the right direction, and how we as citizens, and especially as African American citizens, we do need to go and lobby on the federal, local, and federal and local level of politics to help us to fight the system that we are in.
What do you say? And this, I am no fan of Joe Arpaio, I think is how you say his name, in Arizona. I know you guys probably have heard of him. He does this thing where he has the people wear pink jumpsuits and work really hard in the prison system. And he's kind of he is a racist. But I mean, he is. He doesn't care if other people know that. But there is something to be said about him, the way that he runs his prison. Prisoners don't want to go back. What do you guys feel about the form of punishment that should be given out so people who are guilty, let's say that everything works the way it should, what form of punishment or what type of prison system would you be satisfied with in terms of the punishment that is given to these prisoners?
In other countries, in other well-off industrial countries, the prison system is not like ours. Prison is actually a rehabilitative state. It trains people to have skills so that when they get out of prison, they don't come back because they can find jobs in their communities. Here, prisoners do not find, a lot of prisoners, about 60% I read, do not find a job 1 year after getting out of prison. So it makes sense that 2/3 of prisoners go back to prison. So if prison were an actual rehabilitative place instead of the profit-making industry that it has become here in the United States, then that would be an option. So yes, you should make it to where that prisoners do not want to go back to prison, but you have to give people tools and also opportunities when they get out of prison to make it.
To be able to function in society again.
I think it depends on what crime you do. The way you should be dealt with.
Go on. Explain.
Well, if it's a non-violent, silly, stupid drug charge, yes, the rehabilitation and all these other things are good, positive things to get people who can still have a chance in society to go back out, find jobs and everything else. But if you're like a kid diddler, I don't really want you out of there. Just stay in prison. If you're out there molesting kids, if you're raping and murdering,
not every crime's the same.
I don't want you back out there.
There is a degree of violence, but generally these prison systems, they're named correctional facilities, so they should do their duty in correcting these people so that they can become the functional members of society and contribute to society.
And we also have to make sure we don't other them. we as Black people know how it feels to be othered and to be like, well, it's those people who are there, and like it's just those people's problems, and those people are making this stuff up. But I feel like we have to make sure we remember the humanity of people who are in prisons. There are fellow human beings, and I think a lot of times criminals are dehumanized, which is very familiar because slaves were dehumanized. Black people were dehumanized, made 3/5 of a person. So it's like it's a psychological dehumanization of criminals that we have. So as soon as you hear that someone is a criminal, it's like, oh. So I think rehumanifying, I know that's not a proper term, but
We're gonna go with
for lack of
Oh,
term, just gotta remember that these people are fellow human beings.
I could go into another rabbit hole, but instead, I'm going to plug you to the website instead. Go to www.blackadvancement.com. And these last three that we also like to plug from the website are always the biggest ones of all of them because it's pretty much what the whole nonprofit was based off of and founded for. First off, the topics. You have the chance to not only participate in one of these roundtables and do all those other things, but you also have the chance, the opportunity to put forth topics for us to discuss, for us to think about, for us to develop solutions towards, and you can put those all on the website under the topics section. Also, events. That's another thing that we do, whether it be fundraiser or just doing things like live symposiums or doing things within our community. Events is a very important aspect of the Black Advancement Incorporated, and that is something that we love to do and look forward to doing as often as possible. And plus, they're fun for the kids. But the biggest thing that we are about is solutions. And our solution section, if you haven't given it a chance, a read over, is also on the website. And you can go on that tab and you can see everything from the Pin It Forward program to new initiatives that we will be coming out with soon this year, like the Black Church Alliance and other things that we have lined up, like the Black Business Expo. So with all that being said, we'll be back and I'll have my take on all three questions and everyone else will be quiet because I'm the man. And that is how it's supposed to go. We'll be right back. All right, and welcome back. And now we're at our last section of today's topic, which is called My Take, where I get to talk and everyone else gets to be quiet because I'm the man. And I address all the questions. So the first question, does the Black community benefit more than it suffers from the use of prisons in America as currently constituted? Of course it suffers more than it benefits because of what everyone had already stated, the disproportionate focus on Black people and on the Black community makes it entirely too unfair of a system for it to possibly benefit us. Although I don't think anyone here advocates criminals being let free and let loose in the streets or going over to Africa like Nas had said in one of his songs. I think that, there's no way that it could possibly benefit the Black community, even with the positives of getting some negative influences out of it. The second question, what do you feel is the biggest reason for such a disproportionate number of Blacks in prison? Not to simplify things, but they're Black. It's a system that was built off of racism. It's a system that was built off of trying their best to keep certain, traditions alive in certain ways. And I think that based on the history of what white folks had done to Black people, they expected retaliation. They needed to dehumanize us in order to be able to explain to other people who may have been on the fence why they needed to treat us so cruelly. And when we were free, they felt as if probably in their heart of hearts that we were going to retaliate at any moment. And at that point in time, we have to make things illegal, and we have to make things different, and things have to be better, and we all have to progress, and we all have to get along and forgive as soon as possible, just like we did in South Carolina when Dylann Roof killed those 9 people. So that's pretty much the reason why I feel like it's disproportionately leaning towards Black, and they focus on our communities more. Third question, is prison the new form of slavery? The prison system is very interesting. They do a lot of different things, and of course it is a new form of slavery. But one of the things that they do that's very misleading is they'll do something like they'll take a community in Upper New York, right? and this could be a white community, and they'll build a prison up there because there's land to build a prison there, and they will count the population of the prison as part of the population of the town. So that way the town with a couple of white people in it and schools in it and this get a bunch of resources based off the census because they count these prisoners that they put on these privatized jails, privatized prisons as part of their population, and therefore they reap the benefits of having such a thing. So, is it the new form of slavery? I'll leave you guys to that research, and I think there's no question that it is. Thank you all for watching. Our next topic will be the O.J.Effect. Like us on Facebook at The Black Advancement, and follow us on Twitter at BAInc44. With all that being said, black people, advance. Shout out to Hampton University. Y'all can shout out y'all universities. Don't do it. All right, cool. She never does it though. I don't know why.
Shout out to Mr. Jefferson University, University of Virginia. Much complicated relationship that us blacks have with it. Mm-hmm.
I didn't go to college.
And that's
Hence
okay.
no fact checking.